What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Media Molecule and this post that I saw actually over on Reddit. So this goes back to the PlayStation layoffs that were yesterday, and trust me, I've talked a lot about these layoffs the last couple days. I want to stop. I don't really want to talk about it anymore, so these are kind of the last batch of videos, and then hopefully we can kind of get excited and play some games going forward, for the rest of this week. But I saw this, and I thought, you know what? Media Molecule is really special. I have a lot to say, about them specifically, but I want to kind of read through, and it didn't come from Reddit, right? This wasn't the janitor down the street from Media Molecule. They read it on a whiteboard. This seems to be like a legitimate thing. So I want to read it, talk about it, and talk about, Media Molecule might be under some severe pressure going forward, which is not ideal. In fact, very bad, but it is better than being shut down, and that's what we'll read about. Okay, so the rumor is, at the time I'd heard from a source that London Studio and Media Molecule were the ones most likely for the entire closure, while Media Molecule had already announced the end of updates to its game tools, Game Dreams, and suffered layoffs in the fall. London Studio is working on a new multiplayer live service, urban fantasy game, after pivoting away from VR games following the release of 2019's Blood and Truth and Erica. Another source told me at the time that the game had been progressing very slowly, due in part to the studio switching to a completely new genre. Despite years in production, they didn't expect it to see the light of day anytime soon. So, look, I'm reading into it, I think a little bit more, but I think I am in line with like the comments, at least on Reddit. If this is true, which I honestly think it is, and I'm going to kind of walk you through that mindset, but I guess let me finish my first train of thought. If this is true, like I said, just a few seconds ago, the pressure on Media Molecule, I don't want to be them because they are in a make or break situation, I feel, right now. Their next game, and this is not the studio, and this is, again, something I want to talk about as this video goes. This is not a studio that releases these games that sell 10, 15. They're not dropping Spider-Mans, every 3, 4, 5 years. They're not dropping God of War. Little Big Planet was a big series, but honestly, that kind of like tapered out as time went on, and they only made Little Big Planet 1 and 2, right? And then they kind of left the series. So that was their biggest thing. It wasn't the absolute biggest thing in the world, and I feel like where they're at right now, the pressure is on for their next game to be a hit critically, a hit commercially, to sell a lot of units. And again, to be honest with you, it's not really, and you could say, well, Alex, they're businesses and they're studios, and you got to make games that people want to play and people buy. And there is a very high degree of truth, to that. But the reason I want to talk about this and the reason that I am so worried about it is it's Media Molecule. These are, if you're just looking really at Sony, these are maybe the most pure creatives that they have. And I really, now, the people that make God of War, the people at Blue Point, let's say, there are talented people across Sony's, division. And I've seen stories of like how hard it is to be hired at these companies. They really seem like they take the best of the best in terms of like pure craftsmanship, right? At coding and at design, all this stuff. They really seem like they go for the best. But in terms of just like off the wall creative and just doing things that you really don't see, going against the grain, maybe that's a better way of saying it. Spider-Mans are impressive. God of Wars are impressive. They're still similar to things that have come before. Media Molecule doesn't care. You know what I mean? These people are wacky. They're kind of weird, but in a good way. They make Little Big Planet. They make Dreams. And I like Dreams. Now, Dreams isn't really my type of game, and that's kind of the issue. Dreams was a failure. Now, I say that with some degree of certainty. I don't know that, all the way. And I'm not saying that as a shot to Dreams either. Dreams is extremely good at what it is, and it's extremely good for those that value it at what it is. But in terms of the wide audience, this game never seemed like it did well, beginning, middle, end. And when I say ditched it, I mean probably forcibly removed from it. I think they probably wanted to do that forever. I think it's clearly a creation platform. Like that's literally, it's a platform with all these tools and all these methods to create. And it's driven by the community more than now Media Molecule sets it all up for you, but it's driven by the community. That's genius. You don't have many games that do that. And I'll tell you this, you especially don't have many games that do that in the AAA space from a studio that's owned by a Sony or a PlayStation, right? It's a big deal. And so I award them a lot of creativity points. And now here's the thing. I honestly would say that it doesn't matter. That's the sad thing, and that's why I feel sad about it. It doesn't matter. Little Big Planet can be inventive and creative and all this stuff. If the games are not selling, especially in this climate, where we're at in the gaming industry, this studio is next. And now the reason that I believe this rumor just in general, right, I kind of mentioned this in the beginning. So two things, right? I do remember the layoffs, and I remember being very scared when they, talked about those layoffs. So I remember they pulled out of Dreams and they did layoffs, okay? Now, at the same time, there were rumors that PlayStation, because there was talk in the fall of Naughty Dog, laying people off or contracts expiring and not being re-signed, right? Naughty Dog, the visual arts team. A lot of what Sony announced yesterday seemingly was started probably around like August, September, October. Okay, because we started to hear about it there, but then Sony didn't do any announcements until yesterday. During that same time, there was heavy rumors that PlayStation was shutting down a studio. And I remember thinking around the same time as Dreams and same time as Media Molecule was laying some people off, I was thinking and kind of scared really these last like 3, 4, 5 months when PlayStation announces it. Because I did think, eventually you're going to announce all the stuff that's happening quietly. Eventually you'll do some sort of post. I was terrified that when it came to it, they would say Media Molecule is the team that we shut down. Now, to be honest with you, and it's not a diss against London Studio, but I'm very thankful it wasn't Media Molecule. And I don't know if it's Little Big Planet. I don't know if it's the creativity kind of backing, because it's kind of like two different elements to it, right? Number one, you imagine all eyes from Sony or PlayStation's higher-ups are on Media Molecule and said, okay, enough is enough. You can be creative, but you need to make a game that people are going to play, right? So that's one part of it. On the positive side, maybe they do see that in them. And I hope they see it in them, right? But I mean, if you're looking at it optimistically, you're like, all right, there was maybe a 50-50 shot. It was them or London. No, I'm not saying anything against London Studios. I did play Erica and thought that was a solid game. I didn't think it was like spectacular. And the VR stuff, the VR is not their fault. Sony is not really doing it all that well. VR in general, it doesn't seem like you can sustain a lot of these studios just making VR stuff. So I don't really put the blame on London Studios. The game they were making, I like some of it. It being a live service game, again, because I guess every game has to be live service game. Do I think they made like the right choice? I guess if you had to pick between the two, I do look at the creativity of Media Molecule and say you should keep them. And again, optimistically, and keeping, I guess, London Studios out of it, just focusing on Media Molecule, I'm hoping that that was the rationale. They thought, okay, these people, and maybe some of them are still there. I feel like it's a tight-knit group. So maybe there's Little Big Planet vets there. Maybe, obviously, Dreams. And they are such a different studio. It's good to have. It's good to have that kind of team. Again, though, at the end of the day, especially in a business that we're in right now, really, like, they're always in it to make money. Like 20 years ago, they were in it to make, even if they said they weren't. They were in it to make money. They were in it to make money 18 years ago, 15 years ago, 4 years ago, right? Like all of those years. Right now is the worst that it's been in a while. Now, probably not the worst like ever, but easily the worst in the last couple, generations. Maybe like back in the beginning of PS3 was worse, but this is pretty bad. So no matter what, like they have got to make, and maybe you go back to Little Big Planet. That's what I was kind of hinting at even towards the beginning. Maybe you do a remake of Little Big Planet 1. Maybe, there is a literal Little Big Planet 3. Maybe you make a Little Big Planet 4. I feel like at this point, especially because new IPs are so dangerous. And this is, by the way, I hate this entire thing. Because I like new IPs. You don't get a Little Big Planet if you don't make it in the first place, right? Like it got 3 games. It got a kart racing game. How did it get there? You had to make it originally. So new IPs are extremely important. And new IPs sometimes are better than established properties, right? You need them. The sad, like just depressing state of the industry is they might have their backs so far up against the wall that they have to go back to the well. And it's not a bad well. It's actually a pretty okay well. And they have to maybe go back to Little Big Planet. No, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I think just that speculation from me, just the idea that you're then limiting these massively creative people, maybe the most creative people you have in your entire company, and you're telling them, you need to sell. Like the next game needs to sell outrageously well, and we're not really comfortable letting you do a new IP, so your creativity can't really run wild. You're going to have to make it work in something else. Maybe even you're just going to have to make a Little Big Planet game, and you can get creative there, but you're going to kind of be limited to Little Big Planet. It's not the worst case scenario. I wouldn't really call it the best case scenario. Maybe it's like the best of the worst that you could possibly, I don't know. Well, it could get a whole lot worse, right? Because you could shut them down entirely. So it's not ideal, but again, I mean, making this video, I just want to keep shouting them out that they are very, very creative people, and it's a very creative studio, and I hope that they make it through this because, again, actually one final thing to say, it's not over. That's the scary, other depressing thing, right? They could come back in another 6 months, PlayStation, and lay off another, 5-10% of their entire workforce, and firing everybody. I mean, it could absolutely be something that they do. So we'll see what happens, but I hope that they are able to at least get a shot at making something else, and I'm going to support it no matter what. Again, like, while Dreams isn't my thing, I own it. I bought it day one. Full price, bought it day one. So I did support. I have some Little Big Planet games of the past, so I'm right there with, Media Molecule with whatever they do next. So let me know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.